Hey everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to get started in about a minute and a half. So, welcome. One more minute and we'll get started here. We'll let you all get settled in, grab your coffee or tea or water, anything that you are drinking, bring it with you. Snacking, maybe you have a snack. We'll get started in just a few seconds here. While we're waiting, those of you that are tuning in, I hope you'll consider being a guest on the Nonprofit Coffee Talk. Or if you have somebody that you think should be a guest, let us know. Or if you have a topic you'd like to have us address, then please give us that feedback too. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate you tuning in, and we hope you find the session today helpful. So I'm so excited to have Cyndi Mayer and Evelyn Huhyn here today to talk about common elements of grant proposals. This is such a hot topic among nonprofits. Grants, grant writing, grants management, it's all really, really top of mind for nonprofits. Um, I want to share a little bit about our guests today, and then we'll just get started in this conversation. They have a lot of really good information for you today, and I think you're going to want to soak it in. So I always ask my guests before I bring them on to the Nonprofit Coffee Talk what idea they're going to bring that can really lead to meaningful change for nonprofits. And I loved what they said. So here's what it is. So many of our clients come to us looking to apply for grants. Oftentimes they're not ready and they have no idea what is involved in pursuing grants. And so today, Cyndi and Evelyn are going to share the elements of grants and how it's a collaborative process between grant writer and the organization, or the organization and a consultant. Cyndi Mayer, MPA, is the founder, president, and CEO of C.A. Mayer Consulting. She has more than 20 years of nonprofit industry experience and possesses exceptional strategy development and communication skills. Cyndi has a Master of Public Administration from Seton Hall University with a concentration in leadership, governance, and public policy. She also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communication from Wright State University and serves on the board of directors of the ASHS Legacy Foundation and is a proud member of the Grant Professional Association. Evelyn Huhyn has a Master of Public Administration with a concentration in nonprofit management from Seton Hall University. There's a theme here. Um, and she obtained her BS in Political Science at the University of San Diego, a beautiful place to be. She has extensive experience as a political and labor organizer, as well as program management and evaluation. She's proficient in Vietnamese and Spanish and English, because I've met her, has familiarity with social media, and is highly skilled in Microsoft Office. Evelyn also has vast experience using Foundation Center and Lexis Nexis databases and is highly proficient in nonprofit management. She also has demonstrated experience in community and economic development. So I am so thrilled to have you both here today. Welcome. Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you for being on. I'm so thrilled. I'm Libby V, nonprofit champion and founder of Libby V and Associates. Through visioning theory of change work, leadership coaching, fundraising support, and organizational and board development, our nonprofit leader clients successfully raise more money and have more impact. But not all nonprofits can afford to hire a consultant, so I created the Nonprofit Coffee Talk as a way to provide great content and helpful information to as many nonprofit people as I can. I hope you find it useful. Please, again, feel free to suggest other topics or speakers you'd like to see us have on, or be on with us, be a guest. We'd love to have you. So that was a long introduction. Welcome, Cyndi and Evelyn. Um,
So
we
happy to be
connect.
here.
Yeah, thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thank
Aw,
you for
thank
inviting
you
us.
so much. I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. So we met, I don't know, a couple of months ago. And I just instantly liked both of you and thought that you could add value today. And so I wondered if we could just have a conversation about grants and nonprofits and how to do it right.
Mhm.
And so to get us started, and I think Evelyn might be, or Cyndi might be frozen. So maybe she might need to log out and log back in. But I wonder if you could just get us started, like talking about what was part of that introduction. What is the way to get started with grants? What do you need to have in place? What's important to be thinking about as a nonprofit organization, especially the leader, when they start thinking about grants. What's really the important pieces of that?
Let's see if Cyndi, are you
Am I
able?
still frozen?
You are frozen, but we
We
can
could
hear
hear you.
you.
Yeah, we could hear you, Cyndi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
And it's a nice picture of you, not making a
Oh,
weird face or anything. So,
good. Well, hopefully the camera will catch up.
yes.
Yeah, so, um, Evelyn and I were talking about this earlier, and one of the things or one of the misconceptions is that it's that grant writing is done in a silo, and
Hmm.
it's not. It's truly a collaborative process. Um, I taught a master class yesterday, actually, so this is really fresh in my head. Um, and one of the misconceptions that, or excuse me, one of the things that we see from our clients is they come to us and say, "Hey, I have this RFP. It's a federal grant. I need your help. Can you prepare this grant for us?" Well, the answer is yes, but there are certain things that need to be in place prior to, right? Aside from the federal government registrations, which are important, right? You can't even
Mhm.
submit a federal grant if you don't have that finalized. But, it's also about the client and the consultant working together in describing their project or program, right?
Mhm.
So it's I one experience I had at a former employer is telling of it all. When I was the government grant writer for a mid-sized nonprofit, and I worked with the program administrator, I've worked with the CFO, sometimes I worked with program staff. Why? Because they're closest to the programs, right?
Yes.
Um, and they know better than I um, what can be accomplished and what cannot,
Mhm.
what's
Mhm.
realistic and what's not. If you leave it to me, the grant writer, I have to guess at certain things. And if I guess that you're going to send 85 high school students through financial literacy in cohorts of 80, when the organization in the past has been hard pressed to get 20, we have a problem, right?
Yes.
So organizations, people need to understand it is a collaborative process. It's not done in a silo. And
Mhm.
even if you are a staff grant writer, it should not be done in a silo.
Mhm. Yeah. And boy, I mean, historically, it has been. That's been
Yes.
my experience.
Hmm.
I have lots of experience working in nonprofits and with nonprofits, and man, I've seen it and experienced it firsthand. Where
Hmm.
even if you're an internal grants manager or a department, which I've overseen, a department,
Hmm.
everybody in the whole rest of the organization turns to you like, well, come on, write your grants. Even
Yes.
that has to be collaborative internally, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
so important. Like, just like a grants contractor or consultant can, you know, mistakenly forward bad information they get from the organization. That, like you mentioned, City, it can happen internally too if the grants person has to write the program description and talk about what
Yes.
outcomes they're going to achieve. So
Yes.
collaboration is so key. I appreciate you bringing that up. Um,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
that's how we work internally at C.A. Mayer Consulting. Between Evelyn and I and other contractors, we work collaboratively. We don't work in a silo. I think you
yeah,
heard us chatting earlier, Libby, while we were waiting to start, and we were talking about, or we were talking about one of our clients and a particular grant that was forwarded to me. And we go back and forth determining whether or not it's a good fit.
yeah.
So we do that internally and we do that with our clients as well.
That's great. That is the best way to work, right? Not in a vacuum.
Yeah,
It just can't happen that way. Um,
right.
I'd like to ask you a question because I seem to attract nonprofit founders, and I think
Mhm.
it's partly because, as you said, not here, but before, there's a flurry of new nonprofits coming to fruition
Yes,
since 2020. People
yes,
had time to reflect or whatever, and they saw needs, they had experiences, and they want to help. And so
right.
there's a lot of nonprofits being formed right
Hmm.
now and in the last 2 years. Um, I hear a lot from nonprofit startups, founders, um, or people who are thinking of starting a nonprofit, well, we'll just get grants to fund our organization. And there really is this misconception out there. It's a myth that
Yeah,
you can start a nonprofit and just fund it so easily with grants because there's just so much money out there. It's
yeah,
just raining money, from foundations and corporations,
right.
and it's really a myth, and it's not it doesn't happen like that. So
It's
I
not
wonder if you
realistic.
two could just take time to address that misconception.
You mind if I
Yeah,
take?
well,
Oh,
sure. Go for it, Evelyn.
well, Cindy and I just had this discussion yesterday at our masterclass presentation. So the way I see it is um, there's the positive, right? People had time to reflect and assess what is important to them. I'm going to run with my dream that I've put off
Hmm.
for years and run with it. There's that aspect, which is wonderful because it shows the best in humanity. I want to change the world, do my part to change the world, and I'm going to make it happen. And then we have the funding side. And the funding side is more about um, showing the data. And this is more of the code side, showing the data that shows that the organization is actually making a measurable impact. And the key to making a compelling grant proposal is building that bridge between that altruistic, generous side that I bet most of these founders have, and connecting that with the data. Are you making a measurable impact? Are you feeding X amount of people with the resources that you're providing? Are you feeding underserved communities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And so it, to your point, Libby, it's more complicated and it's that bridge. And that's where hiring a professional grant writer um, is the person to help build that bridge between the altruistic side and the more code numbers side.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like it helps to have somebody ask the tough questions, right? So that you're set up right from the beginning. It's not just about getting grants, it's about utilizing them the way they're supposed to be utilized, getting the outcomes that you said you were going to get, and being able to report in a really profound way and tell the story of the implementation of the grant. So thank you for that. And Cindy, did you want to add to that?
yeah. First of all, I wanted to validate something. First, we're getting a lot of people coming to us who have newly formed a nonprofit in the last 2 years. So that is really what's happening here, which is great. And they too think, oh, we'll just get grant funding. We have the greatest mission and a biggest need. And that's perfectly fine and doable. However, you have to be able to communicate or convince prospective funders to invest in your mission, right? Um, some of these organizations don't even invest in themselves, right? They try to do things on their own, and not hire a consultant, right? Or a staff member to do certain things. But the bottom line is you have to be able to convince these funders that you are doing, or excuse me, you can do the work. Number one, you're serving the populations that you served, or that you serve or want to serve. They want to know your story. There's a lot that goes into applying for grants. So it's not as easy as I have this great mission or I'm doing this great work. Everybody's going to want to fund me.
Right.
I was saying yesterday during our presentation that the funders have limited resources often, just like your organization has limited resources, right? They have a pool of money that they want to invest in and make a social impact, but they only have that certain bucket, right? Annually, let's say. And they have hundreds of organizations saying, hey, I need funding. So we have to keep that in mind, that just as your nonprofit has limited resources, so too do funders. So that means your story, your application, your request has to be that compelling, right? And that tight. And if it's not, guess what happens? You get in the rejected pile.
Yeah. Heard somebody, an expert, I can't remember who it was, recently say storytelling is like the number one thing for nonprofits. If you're going to be successful, learn to tell your story in a really
Absolutely.
impactful way and very
Yes.
clearly and succinctly. And
Yes.
I think that's a really great challenge. I've started, telling nonprofits that too. That is, that's incredible. And, Cyndi, Evelyn, what you both were saying is so important, right? That funders have a limited amount of money. And really, in the US, only about less than 20% of funding for nonprofits is grants. So
Mhm.
it should be part of your funding. It should be a part of
Mhm.
every nonprofit's funding, because you
Mhm.
need to have diverse revenue streams. You need to have a
Yes.
multiple revenue streams, grants being one of them.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not going to fund your organization. Very
Right.
few organizations are 100% funded by grants. I do
Mhm.
know one. They just were converted from being a for-profit to a nonprofit, and they build the state. But they also know they have to broaden that, so they've hired a development person, right, to start
Right.
doing grants and individual fundraising. So it's important to
Mhm.
be diverse with your revenue streams. And I just looked it up, Cyndi, when you said, there are hundreds of nonprofits asking for money, right? In the
Mhm.
US, there are 1.5 million nonprofits. And that is
That's
a
amazing.
2022 statistic.
Wow. 1.5.
Wow. And
Yeah.
growing.
And
And
growing
growing.
every day. And
Yeah.
so you have to keep that in mind. So it's important to know, what you're up against, right? We don't want to dissuade people.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you probably need professional help at first too when you're getting started in this game, because it's to stand apart from the other hundreds of applicants. You've got to
Mhm.
have a really good proposal. So
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about how to get started? And also, I wanted to ask you. I've heard, that a lot of foundations um, uh, won't fund an organization unless they've been in existence for a period of time. But are there other things that people need to know, before they start asking for grants if they're a new nonprofit?
Um, they need to have their story straight. That's first and foremost. You need to have a straightforward mission, vision, and be able to articulate that in writing and verbally, right? In a way that people can comprehend and understand what you're doing or trying to do. I want to just go back to something that you said about storytelling. Grant writing is about storytelling and telling a compelling story so that the reader is interested, but also the reader can comprehend what you're trying to do or what you're proposing or what you're doing in the
Yes.
case of general operating support. So anyway, Evelyn, did you want to chime in there?
I would just want to add, and Cindy hit the nail on the head. Usually, it's a couple of years that they want to see that the organization.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But I wanted to add on what Cindy was saying about the mission statement, vision statement, a need statement. What's the purpose of your nonprofit even existing? And it's still surprising to me to see the number of clients, they just don't have a needs or problem statement. It's like, so
Yeah.
why do you even exist? You got to know
And
what you're working, what
Yes.
you're trying to solve, right?
Yes,
mhm.
and that's a great point because that should have been decided before you started your nonprofit, right? It's like
Mhm.
Right.
do your homework before you start a nonprofit, figure out who else is in your market doing the same thing, like do your market research, right?
Mm,
How
yes.
are there other organizations in the area doing this?
Mhm.
What's the need in the community for this type of organization and these services? And find that out first. So, what is your case for existing? What's the
Yes.
case for creating a nonprofit? And so I think that is incredibly important. And if you didn't do it before you started the nonprofit, you definitely need to do it before you get ready to ask for grants or donations from individuals. Why do
Absolutely.
you need this? Why is it a necessary thing in the community or for the people that you serve? So
One of the
great.
things that I recommend, especially to young and newer nonprofits, and even seasoned nonprofits, to do this exercise every now and then. But for young and newer nonprofits, there is a New York, New Jersey common grant application, and I'm sure there's one in every state or every region. Um, but you can go to that and it asks or gives some of the common questions that a grant application will ask. It's not all inclusive, but it's a good start to putting or organizing your messaging, right? And organizing your
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
and putting things in black and white that really shows uh, why your mission is impactful, why
Yeah.
you should be funded, why you should be, why you exist, right? All of those things. So it forces you to, develop the your background information, the history of your organization, your accomplishments, right?
Yes.
um, who you're impacting, uh, talking about your beneficiaries, the demographics of your beneficiaries, where
Yeah.
they come from, etc. It's a lot of information, and it's a good exercise for nonprofits to do in the beginning, and that will help set you up for success in grant writing in the future
Yeah.
if you spend some time in doing that. So that's
I
my
love that.
suggestion always.
I love that suggestion. That's so smart. So I just Googled common grant application because in a previous life, I worked with a lot of philanthropic organizations,
Hmm.
consulted with them. And, there was always that conversation about a common grant application, whether it be in a city or a state.
Hmm.
A lot for a while, there was a big movement to try to get one common grant application, for
Okay.
across the nation or whatever. I just Googled common grant application, and of course, a lot of states came up specific, right?
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
um, but then I saw commongranapplication.com. So I don't want you necessarily to endorse any one thing, but I do you have recommendations about reputable sources of Common Grant Application, or would that one work? CommonGrantApplication.com.
I think any of them will work. I also did a search on that, was it yesterday morning? And all of these images came up and all from different states. I don't think it matters. It's just a good exercise for an organization to go through to be able to start to communicate
Yeah,
what they're doing and what they want to do.
that's great. I appreciate that. I think that's such a good solution, suggestion, especially for people just starting out with grants, whether they've been a long time nonprofit or a startup. It's a
Yeah,
nice place to organize everything together. So,
yeah,
I think that's a really good suggestion, is like make a folder, on your computer and start pulling in all those pieces that you need for
yes.
grants, and take a stab at filling one out. Um,
Mhm.
there's a lot of conversation. I want you to talk about whatever you want to talk about, but one of the things that pops into my head is grantors always want to know your sustainability plan. Like
Yeah,
they want to invest in organizations that are going to be there for a
yeah.
while, to really be a good investment into social good. Can you talk about that a little bit, about what goes into that, if you have any insight? Because it's a hard exercise. It's really hard to come up with that plan. It's not an easy thing to do for nonprofits.
No, it's not. And during our presentation yesterday, we asked the audience, what is the one thing that stumps you in filling out a grant application? And consistently, it was sustainability. It
Ah,
is,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, it is difficult. And listen, we do this every day, and we get
Mhm.
stumped every now and then. Um,
Mhm.
and back to your point about how funders a lot of times want to see 2 years of your tax filings and audits. Um, it's because they want to know that they're investing in something that is um, going to be there, right? And they also want to know that they're not the only investor, if you will, right? Um,
Mhm.
these are things that they want to know.
Yeah.
So as far as sustainability, your goal as a proposal writer is to get the funder confident in investing in you.
Yes.
So yeah,
That's
you want to
the
chime in there, Evelyn?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just such a roadblock. I think I'm gonna go big picture on you, Libby.
Yeah, do it. Go for it.
I think, and I've brought this up to Cyndi in terms of having a scarcity mindset. I know we're talking about it in our circles right now, and for me, in my opinion, it seems a roadblock to um, thinking broadly in terms of fundraising development and other funding opportunities is a scarcity mindset.
Yes,
And
that's
the
so
scarcity mindset just, unfortunately, I see some nonprofits, they only focus on grants. It's like, oh, if we don't get this grant, we're not going to exist and we can't feed the people, and it's going to be the end. And I think, and I'm going big picture on you, but I think that's a big part of why some nonprofits get in trouble, because they've had that mindset,
yes.
and now it's like, oh, now what? Oh, we've only been doing one thing. Oh, what are we going to write for a sustainability plan? Oh, let's
Yeah.
just write something. It's like,
Yeah.
but it goes back to a mindset of how we're going to invest in our mission, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
how will that how we invest in our mission will have the greatest impact on the community that we're serving. So I think
Yes.
changing the mindset can change that trajectory in terms of thinking broadly, in terms of fundraising, development, pursuing grants, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wind this up. It goes by so fast. I would
It
love to
does.
invite you back, and I just want to put an exclamation point on what you're both saying and sum it up, I think, with the conversation about sustainability should not happen when you're writing a grant.
Right.
It should be a robust conversation, if not a day of retreat with your board and staff to come
Yes.
up with how are we going to sustain this? What are we going to do for funding? What do we want our revenue mix to be? What are our strategies around development and sustainability? Like it has to be, and it's not a one-time conversation.
No.
It's
Absolutely.
constantly, thinking about how are we doing? What do we need? And you don't want the tail to wag the dog as far as getting funding that then you have to create something that you're not already doing either, right? That's part of
Right.
sustainability too, is,
Right.
really being clear on what finding grants that match what you already do and supporting that,
Right.
unless you're going to do something new and then you look for a grant to do that. So anyway, thank you so much. This was incredibly informative and helpful. And I know people are going to really find it is exceptionally helpful for them as they think about grants. So I want to invite you back anytime to extend this conversation. It's one of the hottest topics among nonprofits, and I love providing a lot of good information about it. And where can people get in touch with you if they're interested in talking with you further about your grants work?
Actually, they can book a free consultation from our website. It's www.ca Consulting. That's www.ca consulting.com.
Great.
You can also call us at 973 761 no, yeah, 761-2090. I don't call myself much. I don't call my
I
business
love
much.
it.
But yeah, either way, we're also on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. I would love, love, love if you guys would follow us. We're very active on LinkedIn, and we often post grant opportunities there. So you might it might be beneficial to you as a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, I encourage you to link with them on LinkedIn because
Yes.
they share a lot of great information that will be helpful to you. So thank you
Thank you,
so
Lizzie.
much. I'm going to end the
Thank
broadcast.
you.
Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. So appreciate you following us and watching these things. And please join us next week when our guest Courtney Hawkins will be talking about creating rhythms for rest and recalibration. Super excited about that one too. See you next week.